Let's go straight to the editor-at-large of the Daily Telegraph and host here on Sky News, Sharri Markson. Thanks for joining us, Sharri. First up,
Thank you, Chris.
Congrats on your documentary last night, a really great pulling together of all the work you've done, and it rated well here on Sky News. Have you ever you've broken many stories in your time. Have you ever broken one before that has attracted so much international interest?
Well, this is a global story, and I think that's the point, as you just made. You know, getting to the bottom of the outbreak of the coronavirus, how it started and where it started, is so important and should be of absolute fascination to any journalist working today. And, you know, when you look back over the past month, it was probably around 4 weeks ago that Paul Barry first attacked me for even mentioning in one of my stories that intelligence agencies were looking at the Wuhan laboratories to see what role they played or potentially if the virus leaked from their laboratory. You know, that bullying from the public broadcaster, that trying to shame me out of pursuing that line, you know, that was almost probably a month ago now, and The Guardian and the Sydney Morning Herald and everyone else followed suit. And it's quite extraordinary that you have the public broadcaster trying to bully journalists out of pursuing a legitimate line of inquiry that Western governments all around the world know is a possibility, if not a strong possibility, and that our intelligence agencies are all looking at. But yet, you know, that's how partisan the media is here, that they see everything through an ideological prism. Chris, I ask you, how is whether the coronavirus, whether it accidentally leaked from a laboratory or whether it was a naturally occurring virus, how is this an ideological issue? The bottom line is, it's not.
Well, that's the key question. They see it as ideological, presumably because Trump has mentioned the possibility of the laboratory, and because if it leaked from a laboratory, there's more culpability for China. So they see it as very much a China-US thing, and they want to line up with the communists.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to block any journalistic pursuit or any intelligence agency pursuit about what's going on. And, you know, they keep citing the fact that the Australian government has said it's more likely to come from a wet market. That's based on advice. And, Chris, that advice is now changing. You've now had a series of studies from around the world that say it's unlikely the wet market was the origin of the coronavirus, that it did play an important role in spreading the disease, but it wasn't the origin. And you had just last week, the director of the Wuhan Center for Disease Control said the same thing. These are Chinese scientists. Chinese authorities publicly came out and said the wet market was not the source of the virus. So if that's the case, then you have to start to look at, well, where did it come from then?
Well, that's the more research from yourself. Another story you broke, of course, was with Professor Petrosky from Flinders University in South Australia, with his research suggesting there are certain characteristics of the virus that lend themselves to the possibility of laboratory interference. I mean, this is important information.
And it's not just him. Last night on my mini documentary, which of course viewers, if they missed it, it's on the Sky News Facebook page and on the website and on YouTube. You know, it's not just him. There's an Israeli geneticist. There's Harvard University scientists. And there's La Trobe University scientists in Victoria as well, and others. Of course, these are just the ones I've interviewed and I had on my documentary last night. They all say there's two things that are highly unusual about the coronavirus that make them suspect it could have been created in a laboratory. If you want the science explanation, I'll give it to you very quickly. The first is that it adapts more strongly to human cells than to any other animal, including bats, and those are called human ACE2 receptors. And the second is it has what is known as a furin cleavage site, which makes it very infectious. And what's unusual about that is its closest genetic relative, so the closest bat coronavirus to COVID-19 does not have this site. And there's a full explanation of this on the Sky News website.
Be careful. The ABC will say that you've just said it's got a Made in China label stamped on the side of the virus. Now, just for wrapping up there, the media angle on this. Have you ever had a media organisation before try to out your source. Try to not just try to undercut your story, but try and work out what the source of your story is. Journalists are supposed to respect sources, but here's the ABC trying to expose yours to further their agenda.
Chris, in the history of my career, every big story I publish comes up against incredible attacks from the left and from our media rivals. I mean, you only have to remember Barnaby Joyce, the Barnaby Joyce scandal, to know that that's true, and that was just the latest. Before that, there was the ICAC investigation and many others. So I have the inner strength to not be bullied when it comes to these stories, but you know, the fact that that the ABC's investigative unit, it's not just their Media Watch unit, that they've been sidetracked down a path of trying to expose the source, when, as you just pointed out in your editorial, we never said it was an intelligence document. We said this was a document, a dossier or research paper prepared by two Western governments that outlined the foundation for the Western case against China over its cover-up of COVID-19. That was the document. If anyone thinks that's not worth reporting, then they shouldn't be in the journalism game.
And if anyone thinks China has not covered up this problem in the early weeks, then they're just not informing themselves properly.